I'm glad you're here at Beyond 60 Stories, where every life has a story to tell. When people talk about men in love after 60, they often make it sound simple, as if all a man needs is respect, appreciation, and someone to sit beside him at the end of the day. I understand why that idea feels comforting, but it doesn't quite match what I've seen in my own life, or in the quiet conversations I've shared with men our age, often late at night, when defenses are finally lowered. What an older man longs for in a relationship is far more delicate than grand gestures, warm words, or romantic routine. It is not about control, victory, or being admired. It is about something deeper, something most women never think to offer, not because they lack kindness, but because no one ever explained what truly shapes the heart of a man who has lived, lost, adapted, and endured. From a young age, many men learn to measure their worth through strength, composure, and usefulness. Over time, they build inner walls made of responsibility and silence, not to push love away, but to survive. By the time love comes again after 60, those walls are strong, and their needs are rarely spoken. That is why so many women do everything right, yet still feel him slowly pull back. In this video, I want to take you into that quiet inner world and share the 3 emotional needs men after 60 crave the most but rarely receive. If this feels familiar, I invite you to stay with me. Before we go deeper, if these reflections resonate with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Beyond 60 Stories. Your support helps us continue these honest conversations about love, aging, and emotional truth. Now, let's slow down and begin with the first need, because understanding this one often changes how everything else makes sense. Need number 1. Genuine admiration after 60. Life tends to slow down in ways we never expected. Mornings start earlier not because we have to rush somewhere, but because the body wakes up before the mind is ready. Many men I know sit quietly at the kitchen table reading the same newspaper they've read for years, fixing small things around the house that don't really need fixing just to feel useful. On the surface, it looks like routine, but underneath there is something deeper happening. At this stage of life, when careers are winding down and strength is no longer taken for granted, a man begins to quietly ask himself where his value still lives. This question is more common than most people realize. Men over 60 grew up in a time when worth was measured by what you could provide, protect, or repair. You were valuable because you showed up, handled things, and didn't complain. Even now, many men still carry that belief, even if their bodies have changed or their roles have softened. What they rarely say out loud is that they still want to feel seen for who they are, not just tolerated, corrected, or managed. Here is where the first quiet tension begins. Many women believe they are being loving by helping, adjusting, or pointing out what could be done better. They fix small mistakes, reorganize plans, or gently suggest improvements, thinking it shows care. But inside a man's mind, especially later in life, those moments can land very differently. What he often hears is not guidance, but a silent message that says he is no longer enough as he is. When genuine admiration fades, men do not usually argue or explain their pain. They retreat inward, they speak less, initiate less, and slowly offer less of themselves. Not because love is gone, but because the feeling of being valued has quietly eroded. This withdrawal is often mistaken for stubbornness or emotional distance, when in reality it is self-protection. A man who no longer feels admired begins to conserve what little emotional energy he has left. Real admiration has nothing to do with flattery or praise for results. It is not about saying nice things to keep peace. True admiration is about seeing intention. Even when the outcome is imperfect, it is noticing effort. Even when the execution is clumsy, it is the quiet acknowledgement that says, "I see the man you are, not just what you produce." For men who have spent decades being valued for performance, this kind of recognition is profoundly healing. Think about a small moment many couples recognize. A man tries to fix something in the house. It takes longer than expected, and it may not look perfect. One response points out what went wrong. Another simply says, "I see how much you care about getting this right." That difference may seem minor, but emotionally it is enormous. One response shrinks him, the other restores him. At this stage of life, admiration does not inflate the ego. It gives meaning. It tells a man that even now, even here, he still matters in ways that go beyond usefulness. And when a man feels genuinely admired, he does not pull away. He opens. He offers more presence, more gentleness, and more emotional availability without being asked. You may feel this makes sense so far, but the next need often surprises people, and it explains more than most expect. Need number 2. Being chosen and respected, not managed or needy later in life. Love is no longer about proving anything. Many men past 60 are not looking to be rescued, fixed, or leaned on for stability. They have already carried responsibility for decades. They have raised families, paid mortgages, survived losses, and learned how to stand on their own. What quietly matters now is something far more subtle than being needed. It is the feeling of being chosen. This distinction is small on the surface, but enormous on the inside. Being needed can feel like obligation. Being chosen feels like desire. When a man senses that he is kept close because he is useful, dependable, or necessary, love begins to feel heavy. When he feels chosen, love feels alive. One creates pressure, the other creates devotion. Many women, especially those who have spent years caring for others, express love through involvement. They organize schedules, offer solutions, step in quickly to help things run smoothly. It comes from good intentions and a lifetime of competence. But to a man, especially later in life, too much management can quietly translate into a painful message. It can sound like doubt, like a lack of trust, like being tolerated rather than wanted. This touches a man at the level of identity. A man can survive failure in the outside world. He can accept aging, physical limits, and changing roles, but feeling questioned or managed by the person he loves cuts much deeper. It suggests that his judgment is no longer respected, that his presence is practical rather than desired. Over time, that feeling erodes something essential. When a man feels chosen, something changes in him. He gives without being asked. He leads without resistance. He shows up not out of duty but out of desire. Respect does not mean agreeing with everything he does. It means allowing him the dignity to try, to make decisions, to make mistakes, and to own the results. Respect says, "I trust you as a capable man, even when things are imperfect." Many men never say this out loud. They simply pull back when love starts to feel like supervision. They become quieter, less expressive, and less emotionally available. Not because they do not care, but because they no longer feel free to be themselves within the relationship. Love that once felt chosen begins to feel conditional. If this part of the conversation feels familiar to you, I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Take a moment to share in the comments whether you've ever felt the difference between being needed and being chosen, either in your own relationships or in what you've observed over the years. These shared experiences often help others feel less alone, and yet, even being chosen and respected is not the full picture. Something else quietly determines whether a man stays emotionally open or slowly closes off again. And that brings us to the next need. Are you ready for it? Need number 3, freedom without distance. As men grow older, the way they handle emotion often becomes quieter, not because they feel less, but because they have learned a different way to survive it. Many men after 60 do not process stress or confusion by talking things through. They reset themselves through silence, distance, or by focusing on something practical. A walk around the block, time in the garage, fixing something that doesn't really need fixing for them. This space is not escape, it is recovery. This is where one of the most misunderstood moments in later life relationships appears. When a man grows quiet or pulls inward, many women feel a familiar tightening in the chest. Silence feels like danger. Distance feels like rejection. The mind fills the gap quickly, wondering what went wrong or what is being lost. Out of love and fear, questions begin to surface. Reassurance is asked for. Explanations are requested. Connection is pursued harder inside a man. Something very different is happening. When he retreats, his nervous system is trying to regulate itself. He is sorting feelings in a way that feels safe to him. When that space is followed too closely, when silence is questioned or monitored, the experience shifts. What was meant to be healing starts to feel suffocating. The message his body receives is not love, but pressure. Men do not interpret this as closeness. They experience it as a loss of oxygen. The more closely they are followed during moments of retreat, the less space they feel to exist as themselves. Over time, they may begin to associate emotional connection with exhaustion, not because their partner is wrong, but because their internal rhythms are different. Freedom without distance is a delicate balance, especially later in life. It does not mean disengagement. It does not mean indifference. It means allowing space without suspicion, presence without pursuit, trust without constant checking. A man who feels free to step away briefly without being questioned often returns more open, more affectionate, and more emotionally present. Many men describe this difference in simple terms. One kind of relationship feels like being watched, the other feels like coming home. In one, silence is dangerous. In the other, silence is allowed. Men almost always gravitate back toward the place where they can breathe. A woman who offers this kind of freedom does not disappear. She remains grounded, steady, and emotionally available without chasing. She trusts the bond instead of testing it. This calm presence communicates something powerful without words. It says, "You are safe here. You don't have to prove anything. You can return when you are ready." This need becomes especially important after 60, when energy is limited and emotional reserves are precious. A man who feels trusted in his need for space does not use it to leave. He uses it to restore himself so he can stay. When you look at these three needs together, something becomes clear. Men do not withdraw because they want less love. They withdraw when love begins to feel like pressure instead of peace. Genuine admiration restores their sense of value. Being chosen restores their sense of identity. Freedom without distance restores their sense of self. And when all three are quietly present, love after 60 stops feeling fragile. It becomes steady, gentle, and deeply human. Men do not stay in a relationship because the emotions are intense or dramatic. That kind of love may feel exciting for a season, but it rarely lasts, especially later in life. Men stay for something quieter, something far more meaningful. They stay where their nervous system can rest, where their sense of self is not slowly worn down by pressure, expectation, or constant correction. A man stays when he feels genuinely admired, not flattered but truly seen for his intentions, his effort, and the man he has become. He stays when he knows he is chosen, not because he is needed to hold things together, but because he is wanted as he is. He stays when respect replaces management, when his judgment is trusted, even if he is allowed to be imperfect. And he stays when he is given freedom without suspicion, space without emotional punishment, and silence without fear. When these three needs are present, something important happens. A man no longer feels like he has to be held in place. He does not need to be controlled, monitored, or convinced. He does not need to defend himself or protect his dignity. He stays because he wants to, because being there feels natural, peaceful, and right. This is the kind of love that grows stronger after 60. It is not built on chasing, fixing, or proving anything. It is built on mutual calm, quiet respect, and emotional safety. Love becomes less about effort and more about ease, less about winning arguments and more about preserving dignity, less about intensity and more about presence. At this stage of life, love works best when it feels like a place the heart can rest without losing itself, a place where two people walk beside each other, not ahead or behind, a place that feels steady, human, and deeply kind. If this reflection resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Beyond 60 Stories. Your support helps us continue sharing honest conversations about love, aging, and emotional truth. And if you feel moved, I invite you to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear.